Hello everyone, today we will talk about motivation and self-regulation in learning. Motivation refer to chunk. It means the process whereby goal-directed behavior is instigated and sustained. Lack of motivation means students plainly refuse to become engaged in learning tasks or fail to take actions that will assist them in successfully completing it. Motivation cannot strictly be called learning theories. Instead, motivation serves as an umbrella which embraces several theories regarding to the concept of motivation. Today, we will talk about the origins of motivation and self-regulation, the conditions for continuing motivation and self-regulation, and at last, I will introduce a model called ARCS, which is a model of motivational design, and provide several feasible and practical strategies for instructional design. First of all, I would like to talk about origins of motivation and self-regulation, which have three main factors. The first one is curiosity and interests. The second one is goals and goal orientations, and the last one is self-efficacy beliefs. Motivation, in other words, is a function of one's cognition about the task at hand, about the consequences of task completion, and about one's ability to do the task. Cognitive processes are important mediators of motivation. The origins of motivation determines whether learners will initiate and persist in learning tasks. First of all, I want to talk about the curiosity and interests. To make a curiosity and interest classroom environment, the instructors should use novel, complex, or incongruous patterns in the environment. By varying the instructional approaches, involves fantasy, creating problem situation which can be resolved only by knowledge-seeking behavior. Novel environment can not only let learners pay greater attention, but also try new ways of perceiving what they are looking at. The next factor is about goals and goal orientations. When individuals set goals, they determine an external standard to which they will internally evaluate their present level of performance. And there are three factors which may influence the function of the goals. The first is the generality of the goal. Setting specific while challenging goals is better than setting general and easy goals. The second factor is time it may take to achieve the goal. Setting proximal goals is better than setting distal goals. And the last factor is the orientation of the goals. Faced with a performance goal, students with little confidence in their abilities tend to feel helplessness and avoid challenge. Faced with a learning goal, students tend to select challenging tasks, which are believed to benefit learning. Performance goals foster the implicit belief that intelligence is fixed. In this case, when learners fail to achieve their goals, they ask whether their abilities are adequate to the task, and the answer is no. By construct, learning goals are associated with the belief that intelligence is malleable and can be developed. Failure signals a problem with the current strategy and the necessity to revise the strategy. Behavioral perspective on learning, specifically positive reinforcement, contribute to the idea of instant learning's confidence within a performance goal orientation and further foster a learning goal orientation learner. However, not all positive reinforcement can promote persistence in the face of failure, which we will discuss later. The third factor that may influence the initiate of motivation is called self-efficacy. According to Bandura, a perceived self-efficacy refers to beliefs in one's capabilities to organize and execute the courses of action required to produce given attainment. Self-efficacy is a generative capability. Generative capability means that people develop self-efficacy beliefs in different areas and to different degrees, which can help explain why people with similar skill levels may perform differently or why an individual may perform differently under different circumstances without a change in skill levels. There are 4 factors which may influence self-efficacy. The first one is inactive mastering experiences, which refers to a learner's own previous success at a task. Inactive mastery is mediated by one's interpretation of success or failure on a task, along with perceptions about the difficulty of the task and amount of effort expended. The second factor, called vicarious experiences. Learners' observations of a role model attaining success at a task is kind of vicarious experiences. According to study, other than elementary school students who are more likely to be influenced by peers, for other learner models, age appears to have little effect. When the learners are fearful about the learning or feel less competence, they are more likely to have respond to coping models, where the model initially showed the same fear but gradually reached a master performance. The third factor is called verbal persuasion. Verbal persuasion means others persuading a learner that he or she is capable of succeeding at a particular task. Evaluative feedback that communicates how a learner's work demonstrates competence will produce a higher sense of self-efficacy. The last factor is called psychological states. It means the learner's gut feeling convinces them of probable success or failure. Here at the end of this slide, I provide a YouTube video link which show more example and explanations about the concept of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy beliefs is a mediator of performance and achievement. Self-efficacy belief, again, is people make judgments about their ability to perform certain actions required to achieve a desirable outcome. Based on their judgment, they proceed or not to engage in those actions. Other than self-efficacy, outcome expectancy also serves as a mediator of performance and achievement. Outcome expectancies means people have expectations about what actions will produce the desirable outcomes, which include first, physical effects, such as pleasure or pain. Second, social effects, such as approval, social recognition. And third, self-evaluative reactions. The origins of motivation determines whether learners will initiate and persist in learning tasks. And following that part, I will introduce some conditions for continuing motivation and self-regulation. In this part, we will discuss how past learning experience influences the engagement for new learning in the future. There are also 3 factors: satisfying expectancies, making attributions, and self-regulation. First of all, I would like to introduce this concept of satisfying expectancies. As we mentioned above, that both self-efficacy expectancy and outcome expectancy can mediate of performance and achievement. At the main time, when learners succeed, at a task, both efficacy and outcome expectancy have been met. So there are two ways to satisfying expectancies. The first one is the satisfaction of the outcome expectation, and the second is the satisfaction of efficacy expectations. To achieve the satisfaction, there are two ways. The first one called nature consequences. Nature consequences occur most often when students see the relevance in what they are learning and have the opportunity to apply newly acquired information. In the cases where new knowledge cannot be made useful immediately, positive consequences of completing the task can also satisfy the outcome expectancy. Positive consequences can be especially useful when learning tasks are inherently boring or their relevance is not perceived by the learner, such as learning spell. And external recognition is always a good supplementary. The second factor called making attributions. People attempt to understand the causes for their success and failure, and their attributions about these causes determine their future actions. There are three dimensions where one can making attributions. The first is internal versus external. Internal are those factors within the person, such as ability, effort, whereas external are factors outside the person, such as task difficulty, help from other people. The second dimension is stable versus unstable. Stability refers how changeable a factor over time. Ability tends to be stable, whereas luck is unstable. And the third dimension is controllable versus uncontrollable. Controllability refers to the degree to which the individual has control over the causes of success or failure. For instance, ability is internal, relatively stable, and controllable factor. Those who attribute their failure to low ability feel it hard to control and may fail the next time. So for instructions, it is important to help students see how learning is a function of their own effort and effective learning strategies instead of low ability. And for learners with the history of failures, teachers should be especially alert to cues that may further erode individuals' opinions of their abilities. The last factor which may influence the continuing of motivation is called self-regulation. Self-regulation means use of specific strategies to control learning, monitor process, and structure the environment in a way to support learning. Here I show a model which shows the three-phase cycle of self-regulation process. Learners who are effectively self-regulated engage first in forethought or planning, which include task analysis and self-motivation. And then performance phase include volitional control over performance. And last, self-reflection phase including self-judgment and self-reaction. Monitoring process toward goal attainment. Monitoring process toward goal attainment is a critical component of self-regulation. There are three strategies proposed by Zimmerman and Shank. First, observing one's performance. And second, comparing one's performance to a standard or goal. And last, reacting and responding to the perceived difference. However, Bandura views this as only one part of the self-regulatory system, which he refers to as discrepancy reduction. The discrepancy reduction process includes learners set initial goals that they value, mobilize effort in anticipation of what it will take to attain the goals, and continually adjust those of effort along the way. And finally, after achieving the goals, do self-regulation, where learners evaluate their performance with an eye toward making improvement for the future. In this process, self-regulated learners are more likely to make causal attributions which they can control in the future. There are two ways to developing self-regulation skills. First way is called acquisition metaphor, and the second is called developmental metaphor. Acquisition metaphor means where teachers teach strategies directly to learners, model good strategy use, and coach learners as to when and why strategies will be useful to them. Compared to that, developmental metaphor, students are presumed to become more self-regulated as they develop new competencies, provide students with choice and control over learning and motivation, with many opportunities for self-appraisal, and create a reflective community. And for summary, so far, we talked through the influential factors for students to generate and continuing motivation to learn. Motivation appeared easy to generate when the learning activity is interesting, relevant, aligned with their specific external learning-oriented goals, and when they feel they're capable or not too challenging to do. And motivation appears to be enhanced when learners' expectancies are satisfied and when they attribute their successes to their own effort and effective learning strategies. Along the way, learners become increasingly self-regulated as they acquire or develop skills to plan, monitor, and evaluate the learning process. And in the next part, I will introduce a model of motivational design. So in this following part, I will introduce a model called ARCS, which including some strategies for instructional design and also include the process of how to do that instructional design. First of all, I would like to introduce what is ARCS. According to Keller, there are 4 conditions for motivation that must be met to have a motivated learner. So he proposed a model called ARCS. A stands for attention, R stands for relevance, C stands for confidence, and S stands for satisfaction. And next, let's see how these factors integrated and build upon the sources of motivation. A. Gaining and sustaining attention. Gaining and sustaining attention as curiosity and interesting to be a strong source of motivation. Here we introduce some strategies that can promote curiosity. First, perceptual arousal, which means to use novel or unexpected approaches or injecting personal experience and humor. Second, inquiry arousal, which means to invoke a sense of mystery and involve students in solving problems. And third, variability, which means to vary the instruction presentation. And R means enhancing relevance. Enhancing relevance in order to meet prompt one's outcome expectancy and generate interests. It includes goal orientation, motive matching, familiarity. First, for goal orientation and motive matching, instructors can either provide statement of utility along with the goals of instruction or help learners to define their own. Our instructors can find ways to actively engage students in learning, irrespectively or whether they yet see the relevance of the learning activities. And for familiarity, is to relate instruction to learners' experiences with concrete examples and analogies. C stands for building confidence. Building confidence based on self-efficacy that was reviewed earlier in this lecture, learners' confidence is a key factor that can influence learners' willingness in learning. So first, making learning requirement explicit and clear to create a positive expectancy for success. Keller here also mentioned a progressive disclosure, which means to tell your students what is expected when they are ready and able to understand. Second, provide successful opportunities as it can help students to gain self-efficacy and be more self-regulated along the way. However, this does not mean students should never experience failure. As long as we keep in mind that challenge should be a match with the learner's capability, learners' performance should be self-initiated, and learners should get to attribute the failure to low effort and poor strategies instead of low ability. Third, provide just enough assistance and provide learners with reasonable degree of control. And finally, I stands for generating satisfaction. First, intrinsic reinforcement. Intrinsic reinforcement is aligned with the natural consequences we mentioned earlier. Suggestions for instruction would be let students tackle real-world problems. Second, extrinsic rewards. In other words, positive consequences would be achieved by using verbal praise, incentives, real or symbolic awards. Third, equity. Equity means make sure the learning outcomes are consistent with expectations established at the outset of learning and maintaining consistent standards and consequences for task achievement. And in this part, I will introduce the process of motivational design. The first step is to analyze the audience. Analyze the audience to have some idea as to what motivational problems you are likely to face. Create an audience profile using the ARCS model, such as low attention, moderate to high relevance, variable confidence, and moderate to high satisfaction. After you got your audience profile and have some expectancy about where's the problem, you can go to the next step, the step 2, which is define motivational objectives. You can start from your audience motivational profile to define the motivational objective, such as if you predict that your audience will have a low attention, then that can be targeted for motivational design. Motivational objectives should be written from the learner's perspective, such as learners will indicate a high degree of attention in class by participating in large group discussion and debate. This is a kind of learner's perspective define motivational objective. After you list all the defined objectives, you can go to the step 3, which is to design a motivational strategy to achieve your motivational objective. After you lay out all the strategies, the final step is to try out and revise as necessary. Here, I use this chart to provide some feasible and practical strategies that are linked to the ARCS model, which can provide some ideas while you need to do the instructional design. And in this last slide, I show how arcs the relevance, attention, confidence, and satisfaction's relationship according to each other. I hope you enjoy this lecture, and I hope you all stay healthy and well, and have a good week. Thank you so much.